We're seeing corporations using powerful artificial intelligence to outsmart us.
Developments tonight on Cambridge Analytica, the firm that worked for the Trump campaign and tried to influence American voters using information harvested from 50 million Facebook
Target's
users.
advanced advertising system even knew about a teenage girl's pregnancy before her own father.
Concerns over privacy. Now, the social network says it gave information to 4 Chinese phone makers.
Were deliberately and specifically attempting to sow political discord in Hong Kong.
Everything they're doing online is being watched, is being tracked, is being measured.
Privacy is gone.
Given the rising number of privacy scandals, like the ones just mentioned, social media users become increasingly aware and concerned about privacy issues regarding their use of social media. Today, we will tell you in how far these concerns are justified by presenting you our research on the predictive potential of Instagram accounts with regards to inferring personal information. But let's start from the beginning. What is predictive social media analytics and what have research and practice done so far?
Predictive social media analytics uses data mining, machine learning, and statistical modeling to predict future observations based on existing social media records. Among others, these predictions are directed at people's personal information, and a large body of research has focused on this specific area. More precisely, the respective studies show that the Big Five personality traits, people's basic demographics, and even psychological aspects such as life satisfaction or eating disorders can be accurately predicted from Facebook or Twitter records such as likes and tweets. In general, this predictive potential yields many helpful application possibilities, as the inferred information can be used, for instance, to personalize advertisements or product recommendations and to detect and fight mental illnesses such as depression at an early stage. However, the arising possibilities similarly pose ethical challenges and may cause threats to people's privacy if they are abused in a way that they lead to the undesired disclosure of sensitive personal information, the intentional manipulation of people by using their most private information against them, for example within an advertisement context, as well as the systematic discrimination of minorities, for instance within the justice system. Against this background, we aim to fill 2 major research gaps. First, as existing studies focus on Facebook and Twitter and records such as postings and likes, our study is the first to assess the predictive potential of followed Instagram accounts. Such focus on Instagram is highly relevant as the platform is used by 1 billion people worldwide. Second, we focus on privacy and ethical concerns rather than on gains for practitioners, especially as we infer users' personal information without their explicit consent and awareness. Doing so corresponds to the high topicality of privacy issues in the age of big data and contributes to the discussion on legal regulations within predictive analytics. But how do we transfer this into a research model?
To bridge the derived research gaps, our study is based on the research question whether followed Instagram accounts can predict psychodemographic user attributes. The therein included IVs are branded Instagram accounts and the DVs are psychodemographic user attributes. When looking at the IVs, note that we focused on predicting attributes of German users and so restricted the IV selection to German Instagram accounts. To improve our models, we included the most followed accounts from a broad range of diverse categories which express the user's personal characteristics. Additionally, the number of selected accounts per category corresponded to a user's actual following behavior. Considering these different aspects, we arrived at 215 accounts from 9 categories. With regards to the DVs, based on research, we chose 22 DVs from 3 categories: psychographics, demographics, and other personal information. Social media activity comprised Instagram hashtags such as like for like and predicted if users utilized them. Sentiments provided an average score on people's use of positive compared to negative expressions, and privacy irrelevance indicated how many investigated attributes users willingly disclosed on their profile.
Now that you know our model, let's move on with the necessary data. We applied scraping, which automatically draws data from a large number of users without their awareness. First, we scraped over 5 million followers of the branded accounts. Next, we collected the profile data of around 100,000 of them. Lastly, to identify additional popular accounts for our IV selection and to check whether the users follow several selected accounts, we drew the followings of around 14,000 users. Hence, having the followings, we further optimized our IV selection. We added popular accounts linked to psychodemographic attributes, included popular international accounts, and replaced accounts with similar ones, followed by more users within our sample. Finally, we ended up with 220 IVs.
After we had gathered all the data, we constructed the dependent variables in 3 steps. First, we had to prepare the raw data, as the information we had scraped consisted of over 2,000 variables, including, for example, captions of every single post of a user. Thus, we reduced the data, among other things, by gathering all these captions in one single variable. Then we cleaned the data, for example, by removing punctuation. After this, we extracted the dependent variables using a keyword matching approach. More precisely, we generated keyword lists for each DV that contained expressions in close relation with the respective topic. We used German and English simple words as well as expressions and emojis. These keyword lists were then used in an automated search for detecting matches in users' names, biographies, and captions. If a match with any keyword was found, the user was classified as having a relation with the respective topic. For example, Emily uses the camera emoji as well as the tag photographer in this caption. Both cues would independently lead to her being categorized as being interested in arts. In the third step, we refined our DVs. Since for the variables education and occupation, not enough data was available, we had to exclude those from our analysis. These modifications, as well as the IV optimization, led us to the final concept, including 220 independent and 20 dependent variables. A first glance at our sample tells us that we had information about over 12,000 users, each following on average 14.6 of the selected IV accounts. Almost 3,000 users could be identified as female, while we detected over 700 men. The age could be extracted for 1,300 accounts, with the majority of users being between 12 and 25 years old.
Before we talk about the results, we're going to quickly show you how we got to them. As statistics can become quite technical though, we're going to spare you the details and just tell you the most important aspects. First, we prepared our data, creating one dataset for each of the psychodemographic attributes, containing our user following information and our DVs, which are of different scale types. We have binary categorical variables such as gender and the multi-categorical variable residence area with the 4 categories North, East, South and West Germany. Additionally, we use metric DVs like age. Next, we cleaned the data before then building our regression models, which are logistic, multinomial logistic or linear, depending on the DV scale. To get the best results, we used several model refinement steps and tested the assumptions. The latter resulted in the exclusion of the DV relationship status. Lastly, we evaluated and tested our refined models. Although some variables don't have an ideal fit, all considered models are statistically significant. Regarding the prediction accuracy, especially the logistic regression models perform quite well. For example, we can predict Emily's gender correctly with a probability of 85%. Next in line are the multinomial logistic regressions. As this model type compares one outcome category to each of the remaining ones, the resulting information depends on the baseline. Thus, to get many insights, we built 4 models, each using a different compass direction as reference category. The models have very similar accuracies, only West lagging behind slightly. Finally, linear regressions. While age and privacy irrelevance perform almost identical, the model for sentiment results in worse predictions, shown by the very low accuracy. Now we know that followed Instagram accounts can indeed predict psychodemographic user attributes. But isn't it even more interesting to see exactly how?
Focusing on the most striking findings and starting with the different hobbies and interests, let's first inspect which accounts point at a person's interest in traveling. Surprisingly, tour operator Urlaubspiraten is the only travel-related account that does so. Instead, 6 beauty and fashion accounts as well as 5 food accounts exert a large impact on people's interest in traveling, with a major share having a nature and health focus. Given this observation, as well as the large positive impact of 4 sport accounts, we conclude that there seems to be a relationship between following natural and health-oriented accounts and being interested in traveling. Concerning the negative influences, following the Apothekenumschau and the Grünen politician Robert Habeck implies that a user is not interested in traveling, which might be due to the higher age of the target group and the negative environmental impact of traveling, respectively. Coming back to the other hobbies and interests, let's have a closer look at the accounts from which we can infer that a user is interested in beauty and fashion. Overall, we find that these accounts stem from the following categories: beauty and fashion, healthy food and sports, as well as photography. Especially the relation between beauty and health gives an interesting indication for the motives of following a healthy lifestyle. People want to be beautiful. Also for the negative influences, we find clear categorical patterns. If a user follows news-related accounts or male influences, he is likely to not be interested in beauty and fashion. Interestingly, the same applies to users following the channel of the Querdenken movement. This account exerts by far the largest negative impact on users' interest in the topic.
Regarding partying and alcohol consumption, among the strongest positive influences we find several accounts related to music and other forms of entertainment, for example Playboy Germany. We also observe many food and drink accounts, including those representing a healthy lifestyle, so being interested in party and drinking does not necessarily seem to entail an unhealthy way of life. Interestingly, two IVs focusing on family life exert major positive impact on this variable. This connection might be stronger for alcohol than for partying, corresponding to the social media coin term of wine moms. Negative influences are exerted by accounts related to public affairs, such as the Bundeswehr. Staying in the fun section, let's continue with the hobby of gaming. In line with the category, gaming-related channels such as Call of Duty and PlayStation account for the major share of positively influencing variables, followed by two male influencers. Fashion and beauty-related accounts such as DM Balea, however, on average exert negative impacts, just like, surprisingly, energy drink Red Bull Germany. Under the assumption of gender stereotypes, especially the first three patterns suggest the relationship between being male and an interest in gaming.
Coming to the creative minds, we find that following accounts referring to music and photography strongly implies that a user is interested in arts and culture. The same is true for several literature and comedy accounts, as well as for 4 sport channels. In contrast, users who follow conservative political accounts or female influences are less interested in arts and culture. Moving from arts and culture to religion, we see that following evangelisch.de is a strong indication that a user is religious, as it exerts by far the largest positive impact. This also applies to liberal political accounts, such as Heiko Maas. Regarding the negative impacts, we find that 3 out of 5 variables belong to the category of entertainment. Thus, religious Instagram users prefer to see political rather than entertaining content in their newsfeed.
Inferring hobbies and preferences from followed Instagram accounts is nice, yet mostly the strongest influences we find are not very surprising. But what can the same information tell us about users' demographics? Regarding their gender, we observe patterns that support stereotypes. The average male of our sample prefers to see content about soccer, politics, and young women. To avoid confusion, Andrei Schiebler is posting, among other things, pictures of his lightly dressed girlfriend. While accounts related to transport also indicate a male gender, female users seem to prefer topics of healthy food, led by Etepetete Bio, as well as fashion and beauty. Let's now have a look at users' residence area. Beginning with the north of Germany, accounts Chefkoch and Elia Whoop indicate that the user lives in this part of the country where the predictive power of the other listed accounts is not as strong. This is the case as we always compared one compass direction to the others, and some IVs are significant only for the comparison with 2 other directions and not all 3. While we do not identify a pattern here, in the East it seems as a relation exists with the topic of entertainment, as for example YouTuber Julienko, as well as Silbermond, which origins from the East, exerts significant positive influences. This regional context can also be observed in the south of Germany. Instagram operators of the last 3 listed accounts all come from this area. Moreover, accounts related to sports seem to be popular. Moving to the west, with Guido Maria Kretschmer and Germany's Next Topmodel, the preference for fashion accounts becomes apparent.
Now as we know the gender and residence area of users, let's have a closer look at their sexual orientation by identifying the accounts the user follows if he or she is part of the LGBTQ community. Overall, we find that the majority of these accounts stems from the categories of entertainment and food. Moreover, with a clear reference to the category, following 2 accounts run by gay men, Germany's first gay bachelor Nikolaus Puschmann and politician Jens Spahn, indicates that a user is part of the community. The same is true for accounts relating to social and political affairs. Concerning the inference of other personal information, let's first inspect in how far users' following behavior relates to their use of Instagram-specific hashtags. Generally, we identify 3 account categories that lead to an increased use of such expressions: travel accounts, female lifestyle influencers, as well as gaming accounts, whereas the latter impact is likely to stem from the fact that many games incorporate or based on engagement and exchange, which can be fostered with Instagram-specific tags. Concerning the negative influencing accounts, we find that following soccer as well as political accounts implies that a user is not likely to use such hashtags for the purpose of popularity.
Now that we identified which users aim to have a great reach on Instagram, let's inspect whether the same people are also willing to disclose a lot of personal information. Creative accounts referring to music and arts, such as DIY account Linda Loves, exert the strongest positive impact on the variable privacy irrelevance. While food and drinks, as well as liberal politics, are also positively related, we observe that conservative parties exert negative impacts, suggesting that conservative users on average value their privacy on social media higher than liberals. Furthermore, information-related accounts such as Quarks.de also show negative relations with the dependent variable. That was a lot of information in a short time, but what does it mean for the real world? Well, first of all, people really like food regardless of their psychodemographics. Food accounts positively influence almost every measured variable. Secondly, preferences for travel, sports, and beauty and fashion seem to be strongly interrelated. Does that apply to our example of Emily as well? We see that she does not follow accounts related to these categories. However, the list of her followings contains several entertainment-related accounts. From that, we can infer that she is likely to exert a creative hobby, likes to party and game, and might belong to the LGBTQ community. According to our findings, she's also likely to reveal more personal information on Instagram.
Given these findings, our study raises important implications for theory, practice, and future research. However, let us first point to the most important limitations of our work as they further contribute to the implications. First, not all category facets were covered in the Ivy selection. Moreover, in the DV creation we used self-made lexica lacking keywords and search for single keywords. Although we aimed at using unambiguous terms, it is still possible that they were put into the wrong context. Thus, we included several biases in the models likely to affect the obtained findings.
Approaching the end of our presentation, it's important to ask what researchers can learn from our project. First, it reveals the predictive power of followed Instagram accounts and therefore an important avenue for more in-depth analyses. Secondly, the limitations highlight that although we developed our models carefully, we included biases which can negatively affect the validity. Thus, future studies should investigate those biases and develop guidelines on how to minimize them. Most importantly, our study shows that more attention on privacy and ethics in social media analytics is needed, as we were able to infer personal data without users' consent. This is especially alarming if researchers are willing to use that information unethically. It's important that scientists align their work with existing ethical guidelines and carefully interpret their results under consideration of potential limitations. It also needs to be discussed if further legislative regulation is needed. With respect to practical implications, we don't provide managers with guidelines on how to use followed Instagram accounts to infer user profiles. Instead, we address ethical consequences of their actions. Firstly, we advise to be transparent when using consumers' information. This increases customers' trust and prevents social media firestorms, as consumers nowadays inform themselves about companies' practices and share their knowledge online. However, transparency alone isn't enough when handling data unethically. Hence, we ask managers to bear in mind algorithms' limitations and critically reflect their predictions before implementing measures. They need to consider negative consequences the latter can have for individuals and the whole society. Considering the recent instances of data misuse, we believe legal ethical guidelines to be relevant too. They minimize threats of unethical behavior and punish it, as well as increase trust in the company.
To sum up, the key takeaways are that it is very easy to obtain personal information online. However, this doesn't only offer great opportunities, but also enables unethical behavior even if not intended. Moreover, only if there are clear laws and everyone involved demonstrate a respectful and ethical handling of personal data, the benefits of social media analytics can overcome its threats, and everyone, including the customers, can benefit from the growing possibilities of big data. Only then algorithms become truly socially responsible.